It's recording first. Okay. All right, here we go. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. My special guests today are volunteers with Mass Care. This is an organization in Massachusetts that is trying to establish single-payer health care. So first, I want to go to each of you and have you introduce yourself. Let's go ahead and start with John.
Thank you, Sabrina. So I'm John Weissman. I live in Western Mass in Granby, and I'm the co-chair, without a co-chair, of Mass Care, the Massachusetts campaign for single-payer health care. I come up from the labor movement. I was the president of Letter Carers Union in Western Mass.
Awesome. And Maria?
Italy.
My name is Maria. Yeah. Maria Idali Torres, and I'm a retired faculty from UMass. I live in Wilbraham, Massachusetts, and I'm the co-chair of the Western Massachusetts Medicare for All, which is part of Mass Care.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I want to start off by showing a little bit of your website here about Mass Care. Can we talk a little bit about this? Because I think some of the challenges that people have seen along the way, like, by the way, I support this effort of us trying to get this accomplished through the states. I also support national Medicare for all, but it looks like that is not going to happen anytime soon in reference to like national Medicare for all. We have seen efforts like this before with CalCare, where they tried to do it this way, and then they had all the votes and big money came in at the end and they decided not to vote on it. But I want to talk a little bit here. I'm going to just make this a little bit larger. It says that Mass Care's mission is to establish a single-payer healthcare system in Massachusetts so that all residents of the Commonwealth will have access to comprehensive, quality, affordable, and equitable healthcare, publicly financed and free out-of-pocket costs at point of care, because it is basic to life and human dignity. Now, one of the questions that I do have, some people will look at this and they'll think that this is basically Medicaid expansion. Could you please explain to people, when you say single payer healthcare, what exactly are you trying to accomplish?
So it's called single payer because we now have a multi-payer system, which includes Medicaid, Mass Health in Massachusetts. It includes Medicare, it includes hundreds of private insurance programs run by almost hundreds of private insurance companies. That's a multi-payer system. And what we want to do is boil it down to one single payer. It's called the Massachusetts Healthcare Trust. And by financing the Massachusetts Healthcare Trust with all the current spending in the system as it exists now, we can actually reduce the amount of spending. And we can get into the details of that later if you'd like. But the point is that it comes out as a more sophisticated, simpler, easier to run system. You know, Medicare is run with 4% of its budget going to overhead. And we estimate that the single payer in Massachusetts will run with about 4% of its overhead, 4% being overhead costs. And then 96% is spent on healthcare. That's the goal. And so Medicaid expansion is simply expanding one version of the multi-payer system. It's not in any way replacing any of the payers. But we would replace all the payers with the healthcare trust.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you so much for explaining that, because we've seen other states like South Dakota just recently voted to expand like Medicaid. So I just wanted people to understand the difference between that. And I want to go ahead and get started with this because I do know I saw that there was a poll, so to speak, that your organization actually started. And it looks like, based on what I saw from the results, it looks like most of the counties agreed with a single payer healthcare system in Massachusetts. Can we talk a little bit about that, about the results?
Yeah, we ran what's called a public policy question. Under Massachusetts Constitution, it's called a public policy question. It's not binding. It's advisory to the state rep. You run it in a state rep district. You can run them in a Senate district. You can run them in a city or town. We chose to run them in 20 state representative districts. And the question is, actually, it would be helpful if I read the language. It's instructing the representative to create a single-payer system of universal health care that provides all Massachusetts residents with comprehensive health care coverage, including the freedom to choose doctors and other healthcare professionals, facilities, and services, and eliminates the role of insurance companies in healthcare by creating an insurance trust fund that's publicly administered. So you see right there, we're upfront. We're being very upfront about the fact that this would replace all the multi-payers with a single one. And then, you know, we ran it. We have to collect signatures. We have a lot of experience with this. We've done it 58 times. So thank you for putting that up. That's the rounded results. I do want to focus on some of the interesting aspects of those results. And then Ida Lee was the captain of our team running this, collecting the signatures, and then running the campaign in one of our most conservative, though Democratic districts in the state. And so she can talk to what it takes to win. But in terms of these statistics, one of the important points is that out of the 20 districts, if you add all the votes in the 20 districts, 2 out of 3 voters voted yes for this question, to tell their state rep to vote for this law. 2 out of 3. We've been running this question 58 times since MassCare was founded in 1995. The average yes vote is, again, 2 out of 3. It's 68%. So that's a sign that we have a rock solid support. And the only issue now, especially since it's a well-debated idea, beginning with Bernie running for president, it's such a well-debated idea that we know that our representatives understand what they would be getting into if they passed it. So one of our advocates likes to say, we won the policy. And every time we keep doing these polls, this is the best poll you can get. It's better than polling 1,000 people and making extrapolations. This is the best poll right at the ballot box. And basically, it's about political will. So we should come back to that, what it takes to win. And anyway, let me point out that we did better than the most progressive ballot question, which was question 1, taxing the rich. We did better than that ballot question in several districts. We did better in several districts. We did better than the Democrat who got elected. We did better in a district that was represented until this election was represented by a Republican. And that was 62% in that district. That's the first Essex, Newburyport, and Amesbury. We got 62% in a district that had voted over and over again Republican. And then we did, if you take a look at that page, if folks ever get to look at that page, they'll see that we did really well, 64% in what's called Second Franklin. Second Franklin is represented by a businesswoman who was in the Republican Party, left it over Trump, and is now unenrolled, an independent. And that's a very conservative district. Yeah, we did 61% in Ron Mariano's district. House Speaker Mariano is, that's the third Norfolk. He is perhaps, there's 4 people who stand in the way of winning single payer, and he's one of them. But his voters want him to vote differently. And so what we're saying now is that we need to come up with activism in particular. A lot more people need to be involved than just the people in 20 districts. We need to come up with a way to get this out of committee, and we could come back to that. But I thought Italy should tell the listener, the viewers, a little bit about what it takes to win.
Yep.
I live in the 12 Hamden district in Western Massachusetts. 3 of the towns that are part of the district, Monson, Wilbraham, and East Lomedo, voted for candidate Trump in 2016. And then in 2018, they voted for the GOP candidate to the U.S. Senate deal. And so it has a history of supporting conservative GOP candidates and also policies. But we run the question anyway, and we employ a diversity of strategies, including canvassing in parts of the cities that we identify potential support, including working through the networks of activists in the community that will provide lists of potential supporters, both for the collection of signatures in order to put the ballot question on the ballot, and also during the campaign before the elections. We also employ letters to the editor and other articles in media venues like blogs, for example. We work through community and faith-based organizations to identify supporters. We also message people in Facebook, and we use both conventional and social media, traditional and non-traditional, formal and non-informal strategies to reach people. And in the end, the question passed with 55%, which is in this district is really a surprise. And I think that our experience shows that there is a lot of people, regardless of party affiliation, that are interested in supporting a change in healthcare financing, that are looking at their bills and the copays and the deductibles and realize that we cannot continue to have this type of system in which it's so expensive that even people with good health insurance can't afford the deductibles and the copays.
That's right. That's right. I just want to mention to people, so because a lot of the viewers, most of my viewers don't live in Massachusetts, so I do just want to mention to people that, you know, all of Massachusetts is not blue. So when she says like conservative districts, like this area here that's highlighted is particularly or usually conservative. So even they supported in those conservative areas. So one of the questions that I have is Senator Jamie Eldridge. He's actually going to be coming on tomorrow because he actually wrote the bill for Medicare for All for Massachusetts along with the public banking bill. So he's going to come on to break those down for people tomorrow. Has there been any communication efforts between Mass Care Organization and Senator Eldridge in reference to how to take this information and to mobilize people to make sure that there's some type of a push in the House to get this legislation off the ground?
Yeah, well, the relationship with the legislators has been tight from the get-go. You know, going back, this bill has versions going back to around 1998. And we've always had a champion in the Senate who was seen as, you know, progressive champion. Jamie is the current progressive champion of single payer, but he's also a progressive champion in general. The bill itself was written by Mass Care, and then we found the legislators who were willing to carry it, get the title of lead sponsor. Jamie has the Senate, Lindsay Sabadosa and Denise Garlick have the House. There's a number of other senators and representatives who are gung-ho for this bill, and it's a question of focus. Jamie is going to focus, hopefully, you know, starting, if he's going to appear tomorrow with you in other venues, he's going to focus on the importance of this, especially in light of the pandemic. It's a race against time. Are we going to have a healthcare system that can take care of everybody, you know, under situations like pandemics? And he's also recruiting other senators. So that's one of the functions of our lead sponsors, to recruit others. They've formed a caucus now. Medicare for All has a caucus in the Massachusetts legislature, just like the caucus in the Congress. And they're trying to grow their ranks. So that's another thing that is happening in terms of our relationship to the legislature. Basically, to get a bill passed, though, in Massachusetts, you have to convince the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, the chair of the Healthcare Finance Committee, and the chair and the two chairs, the Senate chair and the House chair. 4 people stand in our way. All 4 of them understand the financial value to the state. We're going to save billions of dollars with this system. And the state, as an employer, is going to save billions of dollars. And also, as the provider of Medicaid, is going to save billions of dollars. So that's not the issue. Back to the relation to the legislature, we meet almost monthly with Jamie and his cohort of leaders to strategize. So that has been firmed up. We also have created regular meetings of labor leaders. We're now beginning to find business people. So through those kinds of operations, we can convince our representatives and our senators to take the plunge, you know, disrupt the industry and create a better one.
One of the things I think that has been particularly helpful, I'm an activist and an organizer, is for politicians, and we have a better chance at this with local politicians than with those on the federal level, for politicians to actually hear people's stories and how they are affected by the healthcare situation. Obviously, I think the pandemic was a big wake-up call for a lot of people, because you do have people who are uninsured and just didn't really have the money to pay to go to the doctor. And then on top of that, there are people who are underinsured. They have insurance, but it doesn't cover much, right? So I think the pandemic really pulled the cover off, so to speak, in reference to that particular issue. What do you think about the idea of capturing, and this is something that I could do because obviously I have the show, but capturing individuals' stories in those districts that did actually support or do support single payer healthcare, compiling all these stories together as kind of like a mini short documentary, so to speak, and actually having that be presented to the Senate.
So last year, during the legislative hearing for the bill, we had people presented their stories. Some people spoke about themselves, the impact of themselves. Some mothers spoke about the impact on their children. A small business came and spoke about the impact in these businesses. So they had the opportunity to really present their stories. But I agree that storytelling is one strategy to make the legislators think more about the humanity and the human aspect and the human rights aspects of this. In that hearing, we also make a case that by establishing the Massachusetts Healthcare Trust, we will be implementing one strategy that will allow us to reduce disparities, especially the disparities that are associated with income and costs of healthcare.
Okay, because one of the questions I have in reference to that as well is that why do you think, or what's the pushback for the politicians that don't want to support single payer healthcare in Massachusetts? What is the reasoning for that?
I think the reasoning is the health insurance companies and the lobbyists that are around the State House in Massachusetts making the rounds and contributing money to the campaigns. That's one very important reason. Is the power that they have over certain legislators.
Go ahead, John.
Right. Before we dig into that, though, I wanted to put in is the chat we're using today available to the people who are going to watch this? Or anyway, I'll give it to you. It's a link to a form that we use to collect stories. We just haven't taken it to the next level that you suggested, which is a video. I think that's a great idea. We should do it.
Yeah, I see.
We do have videos of the testimony, because the state, when it holds a hearing, you know, the committee, when it holds a hearing, it makes a recording. And our executive director, Stephanie Nakajima, took that recording apart and created videos of each of our testifiers. All of that is on our website.
Okay. Because I'll be sure to put this form when the video posts. I can also put this in the chat then, and I can also put it in the comment section so that people can have the opportunity to complete this form as well. I think that when we talk about like healthcare, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, like it's just that it would be great if you do that, because the form has fallen into some disuse lately. We want to re-energize people telling those stories.
Yeah, we can I can definitely do that, because I think that we need more people to speak out, and people don't have to necessarily, I know some people may not want to be on camera. That's totally fine. Some people don't feel comfortable using their real name because they don't want like their employer to see this kind of thing. So I totally understand that too. But I think we need as many voices as possible. So we need as many healthcare stories that we can get to really make some noise.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So I think that we've had one of the things that we've had before is we did
is there a lag here?
I think so. It might be on your end.
There's a lag. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to mention the reason we get no traction in the State House.
Okay. So there's a couple people that I do know. One person in particular who I know is very passionate about this issue is Erica Eiderhoven. Are you familiar with her?
Yep. She's great.
Yeah, she's another one I could. She's been on the show before. She's another one I could ping again and ask her, for some type of more support, anything else that we can do to get the message out. Because I think what Jamie's going to say, like he'll be here tomorrow, but I did have a meeting with him about a week ago, and we talked about this as well, along with the public banks. And I said, what about us running this as a ballot initiative here in Massachusetts? And one of the warnings that he gave was you have to have the support for it in the State House, because even if the voters approve it, the legislators can still hold it up and choose not to bring it to the floor for a vote. So it's almost like we have to go back to those politicians and try to twist their arms a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have a strategy statement online which takes that into account. Whatever you choose, whether you want to run a ballot question or you want to get it passed as a law, you have to have the grassroots forces. The social forces have got to be there. So, and if you can win by passing the law with those forces, you don't need to go to the ballot. The other thing about the resistance, Italy pointed out that there's lobbyists there working these people, and we are, by disrupting the economy, we're going to take away a certain amount of campaign donations from our legislators.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is there's these voices among the liberals and even some of our supporters who say the feds should go first. It should be done by Congress first. The states shouldn't move at all because it's going to be ultimately only work if it's a national plan.
So can I?
And I think you've probably heard some of that yourself.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, and this is what I would say to them, is that Bernie Sanders himself in a recent interview said that we are not going to get Medicare for all on the national level anytime soon.
Yes.
Part of the problem is not just they don't have the votes for it in the House, they don't have the votes for it in the Senate, but also the President of the United States does not approve of Medicare for all. Joe Biden said if it came across his desk, he would veto it. But there is another issue that has not been raised by Bernie Sanders that I've been addressing people about recently as well. And that's the issue of the Supreme Court. And this is the piece that people really need to understand, is that the Supreme Court can still refuse it, because unless you make private health insurance illegal, the Supreme Court would need to do that. If they don't do that, then it can be overturned by the Supreme Court. So this is the piece, I think, that this is where Bernie Sanders, I feel like this piece is very important for people to understand, that the Supreme Court can still come in and turn it over. And I think that's also why he's saying we're not going to get it anytime soon. And so we have to try to do something by way of the states. I felt like California was actually going to be the best shot for that because they had the votes for it. But then big money came in and they decided not to bring it to the floor for a vote. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So this goes back to money in electoral politics. We need to get corporate money out of electoral politics. We can at least try to do that on the state level. We do have politicians in the state house that aren't taking any corporate money. And so I think this is another thing that we should push for, or we could try to do as a ballot initiative for, is to push to get campaign financing out of electoral politics. So meaning that people cannot take corporate money when they are running for office. Other people have gotten there by grassroots campaigns. You do not have to take the corporate money. But as long as you have politicians who are there that are taking money from Blue Cross Blue Shield, that are taking money from like Aetna, this is what holds things up. It's a big problem.
Agree.
So I want to highlight this here because it says there are two basic ways that laws become enacted in Massachusetts: by vote of the legislator, or by an initiative petition placed on the ballot and voted statewide in a general election held in even numbered years. Now, when people ask, because people will ask this question in reference to how do we pay for it, how would you respond to that in reference to single payer?
We are being taxed by insurance companies now, or under single payer, we're taxed by the Commonwealth. And either way, we have a bill to pay. So what's the bill right now? The average in Massachusetts for a family plan is bumping up against $10,000. Yeah, I think it's $10,000 a year between employer and employee. So when our economist does the calculation, we come out with the single payer plan costing the average family something like $5,000. I'm not being exact because I don't have it at the top of my head, but I will point you to the economic analysis. While you're on the website, Sabrina, you can flip over to legislation, and under legislation, you'll see the economic analysis.
All right, let's pull that up.
Which is really where what's that? You got it?
Yep.
Yeah. This is going to yeah, exactly.
And then and then if you scroll, this is the summary. People can click on the full report, but if you scroll down, you'll see the savings, and that savings, what is it, 34 billion? It's that minus number there. That 34 billion, a whole bunch of that goes back to cut what we're paying now in half. And it also goes back to the state as employer. It goes back to all employers as lower premiums for healthcare. It's not a premium anymore. It's called a tax. So when it all shakes out, we're going to run a single payer system at about 75 billion versus a current system at 102 billion. So you have to save money. If we're going to run it for less, and it's going to pay 100% of the cost, then we're saving money. And everyone saves. Everyone saves. Not only do we save in our premiums out of pocket, there's no more out of pocket. There's no more premiums, copays, deductibles. It's all a simple payroll tax. But the other thing is, in your homeowner's insurance, a portion of your premium goes to medical care of people that get injured on your property. In your car insurance, a portion of your premium goes to medical care for people you injure with your car. Those all go away because no matter how you get hurt, you're going to be able to see a doctor or go in the hospital, go into get care. No barriers to care, no financial barriers to care means, and the only way you can do a system with no financial barriers to care is to do 100% of the people have to be in it. Now you no longer need to cover, to have liability insurance on your home or your car for people who get injured. And then there's other ramifications. One of the things that we've learned is that doctors spend too much time in billing, whether it's a big doctor firm, a practice, or a little solo practice. There's hours and hours of billing. But technically, once this thing is set up, in order to bill the single payer, the doctor or their staff will push a button. You can see this in Canada in the video called Fix It. People can see Fix It online. And in it, there's a scene where the Canadian doctor's practice, bills the Canadian system. It takes something like 15 seconds.
And we also are going to pay less and get more because mental health will be included, dental health will be included, vision and hearing, all those services that now many people have to pay outside their insurance will be covered. And so there is a reduction on the premiums, on the fact that we don't have to pay copays or deductibles, plus we can have other services that we have been paying directly in cash. So it's a win-win situation.
That's right. I want to read this portion here. The Massachusetts Healthcare Trust will be financed with existing federal revenue and payroll assessments based on ability to pay and assessments on non-payroll taxable income, e.g. capital gains, dividends, and interest. These would fund healthcare in Massachusetts while reducing the burden on the sick, the poor, and the middle class, while the largest savings would go to working households earning less than $75,000. Over 98% of Massachusetts households would spend less on healthcare under the act than they do now. A recent study came out saying that more people are leaving Massachusetts. We're one of the states that have the highest number of fleers, actually, and it started to increase during the pandemic, but it has continued, and that is another selling piece, I think, for those who seem to be opposed to this, is that Massachusetts is a very expensive state to live in, and a system like this would actually save the state money, and it would help residents here in Massachusetts. And what I would pose to them is this: like, do you want residents to continue to leave the state? Because the more people leave, that's money leaving with them. It's not like they're not taking capital with them when they leave. So that's the argument that I would make to them. Like, we want to attract people to Massachusetts. We don't want people to continue to leave Massachusetts. And I think it's just become unaffordable for a lot of people.
You know, Sabby, people and businesses. Because if we had universal health care, then we will be open to many businesses to move to Massachusetts.
That's right. That's a big one. That's a big one. I'm thinking of all the small businesses, at least the ones I know in Boston, that closed permanently
during the
because of the pandemic.
But the same, the same in Western Massachusetts.
This is very true. And the fact that you're in Western Mass, and I have to mention this as well, because I feel like oftentimes Western Mass seems to be forgotten. And we cannot forget about people in Western Mass either. But I know that it seems like there's been an influx of people moving over to your side of the state as well, because of the cost of living is a little bit cheaper in Western Mass, especially for those who are trying to buy a home. I've talked to a couple people that have moved out that way, but you know, this is one of those things for me. This is like a no-brainer. We need to give healthcare to everybody in this country, and we need to try to get it through the states if it's not going to happen on the national level, which, like I said, Bernie Sanders said so himself, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So what are people supposed to do, you know, in the meantime? I think we need to mobilize people and get this message out to as many people as possible. Have you had any press releases in reference to your organizing? For example, has this been covered on local news, or have you reached out to any of those outlets as well?
Yeah, it's interesting that letters to the editor seem to be published more often than our press releases. But in any case, we encourage all our grassroots folks to write letters to the editor. There's been a big flare up over this in the Berkshire Eagle in Pittsfield, and Pittsfield voted heavily for single payer in that election. So it's logical that after we run a ballot question like that, there's going to be a flurry of activity in some of the local papers. The press release that we put out regarding the results was picked up by some of the players, some of the important outlets. But I would say in general, that they're not going to pay attention to us as much when we don't have a strong opposition. You know, we're waiting for that other shoe to fall. And the insurance companies right now, when they testify, every 2 years there's a hearing. We testify with people. They just write something to the committee. They don't even come and testify with a person. They don't take us seriously yet. And when they do, it's going to be a full frontal attack. So that's why during this time when they're not paying attention, maybe we need this kind of grassroots explanation of the bill and explanation of the cause. Like you say, we need a lot of voices so that we're ready for that onslaught when it comes. So one of the things we ask those voices to do is to go to the local letters page and get your voice there.
Have there been any communication?
We've created
oh, sorry. I know there's a little bit of a lag. Have there been any communication efforts with Mayor Michelle Wu? Has anyone contacted her?
That I can't say that I know who has contacted her. There is a hub in Boston. I guess I don't have the latest word for that. We did during the last campaign ask the candidates who are running statewide to give us a statement in favor of single payer if they supported it. We could not get a statement from Maura Healey, but we could get a statement. We did get a statement from Kim Driscoll. So we have a lieutenant governor who's in favor of single payer. We do not have a statement from the attorney general, and we do not have a statement from the auditor, but there are now people working in both of those departments who are former legislators who are for single payer. And we have a committee that has tried to meet with Maura. In other cities, we've had a resolution out of Boston, not other cities, but in Boston, we had a resolution which Michelle Wu supported for single payer. So the assumption is that she's going to be on board if we ask. So we need people to ask her. And we'd like her to testify at the hearing because mayors are their budgets are going to save big time. In Springfield, we passed a resolution, and in the resolution it says Springfield is going to save $44 million under this bill.
Okay, because I have spoken to Mayor Wu. I'm going to reach out to her again because there's other things I wanted to talk to her about as well, including this. But I am going to try to see if I can get her on to see if I can get her to at least co-sign to it, because I think that having her voice signed onto it would be a big deal. I know she just put forward some affordable housing plan for Boston. So I think having her voice added to this will be good. Who are if you don't mind me asking, who are the legislators that are opposed to this? In other words, who should we be putting pressure on?
I think we have to realize the reality of the legislature is that the president, the speaker, the president of the Senate, the speaker of the House, and the chairs of the committees are gatekeepers. And you could have a majority of our legislature. We have now 41% of the legislature, but we could have, when we do a count of who we could have on this bill, and we're working that right now, we could have a majority on this bill by the end of this year. And that won't change anything because we need to change the attitude of the speaker and the president. And then the co-chairs are John Lawn in the House and Cindy Friedman in the Senate. Co-chairs of the House Healthcare Finance, of the Joint Committee on Healthcare Financing. If they could be convinced that it could be done in Massachusetts, we would have it yesterday because it's in their party platform, by the way. You know, the Democratic Party, and this is a one-party state, the Democratic Party has a plank that says they want this bill. They don't name the bill. They want a single-payer system at the state level. And so, you know, the leaders of the party, all they have to do is open the gate.
And it could be bragging rights for them because politicians like to take credit. I'm just keeping it real. Politicians like to take credit when things are accomplished. Massachusetts could be the state to lead the way. We've done this before. Right. We did it with gay marriage. We did it with legalizing marijuana. Like a lot of other states, they kind of look to Massachusetts to be the ones to be the first to do something. So I think like it could be huge bragging rights for them to say, yeah, I was a part of that. I passed that bill.
Yeah, we know how to innovate, and we were the lab for the Affordable Care Act. Remember, Kennedy and Romney got together, and they made it happen. And so we think that we are in a very good position to be the state that provides the trial for such a system. And they also know that. I think a lot of legislators know that, especially the younger generation. And we have the resources, we have the knowledge, we have the expertise in systems, and what we need to do is just do it.
Well said. Has anyone from your organization been given that? Yeah. Has anyone from the organization been given the opportunity to speak on the Senate floor, the House floor about this issue?
I don't know. John, did you know?
It only goes to committee. No, there is a moment in history a few years ago. Jamie can talk about this. When a bill that would have enabled a future single payer bill was passed in the Senate. So there was a floor discussion, maybe something of a debate, but the only people that are allowed to do that debate are going to be people like Jamie. And it only passed in the Senate. It never had a chance in the House. So in terms of the debate, what we want this session, we want a discharge from committee that sends it to a debate on the floor. Now, there are a couple roadblocks because after it goes from this committee, the main committee, it goes to Ways and Means. So it may not get its floor vote, but if we can get it out of committee, that's a milestone in the history of this bill, to get it out of this committee and send it to Ways and Means. The floor vote probably in this, if you watch this legislature, they don't really debate things on the floor. Most of the debate happens in the committees. So one of our stories here is that this bill has never been debated in the Healthcare Financing Committee. Never been debated. Never been confronted. It's never been challenged. It's never been advocated. We want that to happen in the committee, and then we want a vote that sends it on to the next committee.
I think the organization Act on Mass would be really good to get behind this as well. I've spoken to them before. They support Medicare for all. They support single payer. And they're really focused on transparency in the State House. That's their big thing. But I can see them getting on board for efforts to do this as well. So what are the next steps in reference to building a coalition, a larger grassroots coalition for this particular issue?
We have talk about the hubs.
Yeah, so we are creating hubs at the municipal level, and if not, at a few municipalities together, sort of the area. We are trying to organize at the community level. We are trying to organize the business community, both small and large businesses, and we also are reaching out to faith-based organizations because they have also a large reach, as you know. And so we also are meeting with our local legislators. My district, the 1200 district, we have a constituency meeting with our legislator, Angelo Pupulo, this Tuesday at 12:30. And we are going to ask him to react to the results of the ballot question.
Okay.
And every captain in districts where we run the ballot question are going to be meeting with the legislators and doing the same thing. We're also asking other legislators to help us advocate with those who still have not signed on into the bill.
Okay. And I want to put this up here for people
on the webpage, Sabrina.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to point to our webpage that talks about how to start a hub. And maybe that's what you were going to put up?
Yep.
Okay, great.
All right. So I have that here because I think this is important for people to see too, for those who want to get involved, how to form a hub. Take it away, John.
Well, I think people really don't want a summary of this. They want to dig in deep. If they want to be a hub, they're going to want to read this. They're going to want to click on the link to the video of the meeting in Boston where we made a presentation, and you get a nice video of that. The idea, though, is that you've got to be what I call single-mindedly single payer. We are challenged to be involved in every issue under the sun, because most people that come to this issue understand the intersectionality of everything else. But we want to move a bill. That's different from, being willing to go out and picket for your favorite causes, go to rallies, and even write letters to the editor. We want to move a bill means we want to understand the mind of the legislators, and we even want to get people elected. So it borders on electoral politics. And you get a good group together and you get a good strong hub, you are going to be influencing specific legislators and moving them from co-sponsor to advocate in the committee to advocate on the floor. But we're very, I would say, new relative to the end game. We're very early, let's say, in the game, because for a long time, the single payer movement in Massachusetts and the country was just aspirational. I wish we had single payer, and that was it. There was no practical step like this to move a bill. But now we have them here. We have them in Massachusetts. We have it in New York. There's a few other states. And we need a critical number of states to go this route. And I think then we will get a national plan.
I think so too. I'll just read this very quickly, not the whole thing, but just to give people an idea. To be listed as a hub, an organization will first organize an action for Medicare for all. A canvas, phone bank, or delegation to your legislators are some ideas. 2, a hub should have an onboarding process to plug new activists into organizing work, designing a primary contact person for new people in your district who want to get involved. MassCare will list contact info for every hub in the state on its website, and it goes through the onboarding process. And then it says, finally, each hub should work with MassCare to develop a strategic plan to move their legislators. So I think, what I'll do is I'll take links to every single one of these pages that we went to, and I'll include them in the description, the detailed description for the video, so that they have a quick reference that they can just click on and go to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you've been incredibly busy, and that's another thing too. A lot of times for people who are doing like grassroots work, like a lot of you are working, you have families and all of that on top of the work that you're doing on the ground. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you very much.